What's up, everybody? James Bushell here, back at you with another video. If you watched my previous video, you know that I talked about how I would write Season 6. In that video, I talked about the events in Meereen and King's Landing. Today, I'll be talking about my vision of the Riverlands and the North. Keep in mind, these aren't predictions. This is just how I would write the season if I was a writer on the show. I also have to, go with the guidelines based on what they've already set. I can't make crazy drastic changes. I'm going based off of what has already happened in the previous 5 seasons. That being said, let's get on with it. We're going to start in the Riverlands. And if you remember back from my Cersei predictions from King's Landing in the last video, I talked about how Jaime would come back with a dead Myrcella and Cersei will kick him out. Then Kevin will order Jaime to go to the Riverlands to lift the siege at Riverrun. So, Jaime and Bronn head into the Riverlands. They have funny dialogue and train every night. If you remember from the books, that is Ilyn Payne he trains with. And Ilyn Payne just does that weird laugh at him because he doesn't have a tongue. So Bronn's essentially taking his role. Is just that Bronn can quit back. So early in the season, they run into the Septon Maribald elder brother hybrid character, who I believe will be Ian McShane, who offers to take them to the Quiet Isle for rest and food. There they see a giant hooded man digging graves. Jaime seems suspicious of the man, but doesn't say much about him. Jaime thanks the man, and him and Bronn and his host are on their way. Now, I remember, again, once back to my King's Landing video, we learned there that that hooded man that Jaime seems suspicious of is Sandor. So they get to Riverrun, and then when we get to Riverrun, we get the Blackfish back. Remember, he disappeared in Season 3, and we haven't seen him since, so we're going to get him back here. We also see some Freys, Ryman and Black Walder Frey, to be exact, who are there to assist Jaime. We also get Edmure back in the show. He's come down from the twins with the Freys at Jaime's request in order to help with the negotiations. Jaime meets with the Blackfish, who essentially talks shit to Jaime and tells him he will not yield Riverrun. Jaime reluctantly, he'll come back, and then he'll meet with Edmure. He reluctantly threatens Edmure that he will have his newborn baby catapulted over Riverrun's walls if he does not get his uncle to give up Riverrun. Afterwards, Edmure goes to give the Blackfish the terms. The portcullis is lowered, and Jaime and his host and the Freys take Riverrun. The Blackfish escapes, however. He's pretty tricky. Quite slippery. Jaime thanks Ryman and Black Walder, and sends them back to the twins, and tells them to give Walder Frey his thanks. Later, as the Freys are heading back to the twins, they are ambushed by the Brotherhood without banners. The Freys fight for their lives, but lay down their arms after they see they are outmatched. The Brotherhood without banners are led by Thoros of Myr and a hooded woman. Thoros asks the hooded woman what they should do with them. The woman removes her hood, showing herself as Lady Stoneheart, and says rope. So those are the events in the Riverlands. Obviously, in my vision, we will have Lady Stoneheart back. Now let's get to the North. We start with the supposed Stannis death scene. Here it is revealed that Stannis is alive. When Stannis told Brienne to go on her duty, Brienne remembers what her true duty is, and strikes the tree, and runs back to the spot where she was watching the candle. Stannis lets out a sigh, stands up, and quickly walks away into the woods. Brienne sees the candle is lit and panics, and runs towards Winterfell. She then witnesses Sansa's and Theon's fall. Theon has a broken leg, Sansa is hurt but is fine for the most part. When Brienne and Pod run up to them, they are found by 3 Bolton guards. But Brienne slays them as they scurry off. Sansa tells Brienne they need to find allies, and the group scurries off into the woods. At the Wall, there is chaos as the mutineers left the Lord Commander's body in the courtyard. There's friction between the mutineers and those who are not a part of the mutiny. Mel and Davos head to the courtyard to see what the commotion is about. Mel rushes towards Jon's body and convinces the non-mutineers to not have his body burned. Alistair Thorne, who declares himself as acting Lord Commander until they elect one, says he will burn his body, but the non-mutineers go for their weapons. As tensions mount, Alistair Thorne reluctantly agrees, but says if they see White Walkers, he'll burn Jon Snow's body himself. Mel tells Davos to gather the wildlings, for she has seen their use in the flames. Davos curses her and says he will take no order from her. Mel tells Davos that Stannis is alive and will be back at the wall soon enough. Davos gives her a look of doubt and reluctantly agrees. So we go back to Last Hearth, where Brienne, Pod, and Sansa and Theon arrive. We get an emotional reunion between Rickon, Sansa, and Shaggy Dog. The Umbers tell them that the Starks are the true kings of winter and that winter is coming. They then kneel towards Rickon and proclaim him King of the North. Later that night, Sansa writes 2 letters, one to the Vale telling Littlefinger of her situation, and one to the Wall as she remembers Ramsay telling her that Jon is the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. She asks both for help in ending the Boltons and taking back Winterfell. Back at the Wall, they have placed Jon's body in the ice cells. We see the gates open and a disheveled Stannis arrive on horseback. Mel walks towards him. An angry Stannis grabs her by the throat, but he then sees the body of Jon Snow and lets go. He asks Mel what happened here. She tells Stannis what went wrong, and that she was wrong. She tells him that he is not Azor Ahai. She tells him Jon will be the one to be reborn amidst salt and smoke. The broken Stannis, knowing he has nothing to live for, says he knows what must be done. Later that night, Davos has arrived with the wildlings. There's already a stir in the Castle Black courtyard as Stannis is on a pyre, with Jon's body laying close by. Alistair Thorne asks what is going on here, and says there will be no burnings. Davos runs towards Stannis and asks what is the meaning of this. Stannis tells Davos that this must be done. He has King's blood. He tells him not to interfere, and that if this works, to do his duty to the realm and to serve the one who will save it. Mel begins her speech about how Jon will be Azor Ahai reborn, the one who will save the realm from the White Walkers. Thorne comes down to try and put a stop to it, but Tormund and the wildlings step forward and say that this will happen. Thorne backs down. Mel lights the pyre. We see Stannis staring at Davos from Davos' perspective. Stannis does not scream, as he is lit aflame. As Stannis does his one last duty to the realm and falls, the camera then pans towards Jon Snow's face. His eyes open, and that episode ends. The next episode opens with everyone in amazement. The non-mutineers and the wildlings rally towards Jon. They then gather the mutineers. That is, the non-mutineers gather the mutineers. Ed asks Jon what should be done with them. Mel informs Ed that Jon is no longer a member of the Night's Watch because he has died, and that this is no longer a decision that he should make. Mel tells Jon that the Lord of Light brought him back as his champion. Jon looks at Ed and tells him to bring him Longclaw. Jon tells Ed that the mutineers committed treason and should be executed. Everyone agrees. The mutineers begin to beg for their lives. Jon has Thorne brought to him. Thorne curses Jon as he is put on the block. Jon then takes Thorne's head. Jon tells Ed to handle the rest. Ed asks, "Even Ollie?" Jon says, "Even Ollie." After all that has transpired, Mel, Jon, and Davos have a chat. Davos says that he will serve Jon. At this time, a letter arrives for Jon. It's the letter from Sansa. He reads Sansa's letter and says he is heading to meet with the Northern Lords. Mel tells him he needs to stay at the Wall, but he says that it's important to get Winterfell back and to stabilize the North. Jon, Davos, Mel, and the wildlings begin to leave to go to Last Hearth. Before they leave, Jon and Ed have a touching goodbye, and Jon is informed that they will elect a new Lord Commander as soon as possible. Jon and his crew arrive at Last Hearth with a few of the other Northern Lords and their armies. We get another touching reunion between the Stark children. Then they begin to plot their advance towards Winterfell. Jon, the wildlings, and the Northern army leave Last Hearth, including with Sansa, Brienne, Pod, and Rickon. They head towards Winterfell. So towards the end of the season, we will get a massive battle for Winterfell. Things will begin to look bad as their army is starting to lose. their force is starting to dwindle. But then towards the end of the episode, we will get Baelish Ex Machina, as Littlefinger and the Knights of the Vale arrive to wipe out the Boltons and take back Winterfell. Jon orders the execution of Roose and Ramsay. Jon executes Roose himself. However, Sansa walks up to Ramsay and sticks a knife in his stomach. They then proceed to let him bleed to death. So towards the end of the season, we will get a tearful goodbye between Jon, Sansa, and Rickon. Sansa tells Jon that she will stay in Winterfell and help Rickon rule. Jon gathers the wildlings. He tells them that after all this is over, they will have their own lands like he promised. But they must head back to the Wall. And that's the last we see of Jon, Rickon, Sansa for the season, and Littlefinger. At the Wall, we will see that Ed has been elected the new Lord's Commander. He is getting cozy in his new room. He lays down on his bed and closes his eyes. As he does this, he hears a horn blast. He gets up. He then hears a second horn blast and says, "Wildlings?" with a confused look on his face. He then hears the third horn blast, and he runs towards the top of the wall. And he gets to that basket and goes up to the top. Ed, and plenty other Night's Watchmen are up on the wall. They gaze over the wall and see the horde of the White Walkers headed by the Night's King heading their way. Ed stares at the Night's King. We get a close-up of Ed's face, and he says one word: shit. And that's the end of the North storyline in Season 6. So yeah, guys, that was my vision for Season 6. And as a disclaimer, I'm going to give a spoiler alert now. There, you've been warned. I did get some of my inspiration from leaks. Most of it was my stuff, there's definitely been some foreshadowing, like, of Baelish coming back north with the Knights of the Vale to help take Winterfell. I think that was pretty well foreshadowed in Season 5 with his conversation with Cersei. I also the stuff, involving Rickon being in Last Hearth. That was Season 3 or 4 when Osha talked about how she would take him to Last Hearth. But the stuff about Jon coming down from coming down from the north to help take Winterfell, I was definitely inspired on that by some photos. There was some photos taken of Jon Snow around the Winterfell area. And then there was some other leaks as well. So I will have to say that, I definitely was inspired by that to send Jon down to Winterfell. That being said, I think it was mostly, pretty close to what I thought, how I would do it. So that was my vision for Season 6. Now I'd like for you guys to tell me what you think. I love it when you guys write comments. I will respond to as many as I can. And if you liked it, hit the like button and share it. Share it on different social media if you're so inclined to do so. And that's all I got, guys. Hit subscribe if you're not subscribed for some new content, and I will talk to you guys later. Take it easy.